to talk to you about India, where India is today, and where we want India to be in the next 20 years. I was invited to Hong Kong to speak at an Asia forum, and they wanted to hear about Modinomics. I told them I heard about economics, but had not heard about Modinomics. Then they told me that they have deep interest in the new economic philosophy of a new Prime Minister. So I said, all right, let me try to talk to you about what is happening in India right now. So the title of my topic, under the broad heading that you've given me, is called as Modinomics. It's important to understand what India is today economically. We are a country of 1.27 billion people as of today. Our population growth rate is now 1.3%. We have a death rate of 0.8% a year, a population growth rate possibly of 2.1, so net is 1.3%. We increase the population by 1.3%. Our life expectancy for males is 65 years in 2010-11 as per the census. Today should be something like 65. Females are 67. Even though we oppress our females in India, they're going to have the last laugh by living longer. Our literacy rate is only 74%. It's very poor for a country which has had freedom for the last 69 years. Our GDP in March is at $2.075 billion, and GDP is 1 crore 25 lakh crores. Our gross domestic product is 1 crore 25 lakh crores, and this year 2016 is expected to be 1 crore 42 lakh crores. So we are a large economy. We are a large economy, and we have grown at 7.3% a year. In purchasing power parity terms, purchasing power parity is an economic concept by which you take a basket of goods and services, you value them, and then say, what is it equivalent in purchasing power in dollars? We are at $7 trillion. We're the third largest economy in the world. So we are not a small country. We're the third largest economy in the world. China is number one, overtaking the United States last year. The United States is number two. The US is about $17.5 trillion. China is $17.7 trillion. And we are about $6.7 trillion in purchasing power. Because the rupee gets certain goods and services, whereas in dollar they're much more expensive, so you need to equate them. In nominal terms, that is, in terms of actual cost, we're the 7th or 8th largest economy in the world. Our exports, imports, together with export of services, is more than 55% of GDP. So we cannot shut ourselves from the rest of the world, because 55% of our economy, in terms of exports of goods, of services, imports of goods and services, impact us in everything that we do. Now the oil price has come down from $100 a barrel to $48 a barrel, and that is giving us a benefit of something like $60 billion. And that is why prices are coming down in India. So we are impacted by what happens in foreign trade, and we must be part of the global economy. Foreign currency reserves are $340 billion, which is pretty good. We have an external debt of $462 billion. We have a larger internal debt, that means borrowed in rupees by the government to spend, and that is 67% of GDP. And that is possibly something like about 75 lakh or 78 lakh crores. Now, let us see how we have done in the last 14 years. We do criticize the UPA, but the UPA 10 years have been the period of the highest growth in India. Because when the NDA left power in 2004, when the NDA lost power, we are growing at 8.4%. So in UPA 1, Manmohan Singh did not do anything wrong because the left was there. The left government made sure it never took any decisions, so the economy grew at 8.5–9%. In UPA 2, when the left walked out because of the Indo-US nuclear deal, then the loony left came and became part of the NAC, National Advisory Council, and they stopped getting retrospective taxation, and they ruined the economy. The last 3 years of the UPA were disastrous in terms of the economy because we are sloping down, and it hurt us very badly. But despite that, for 10 years, we grew at 7.9% a year. So if you look at the last 14 years, from 2001 to 2014, population has grown at 1.6%, now is 1.3%. Life expectancy only 0.4. So we have a health problem in this country. Literacy rate is only 1%, so we have not done much in literacy. China's literacy rate is 95%. We are only 74. Our GDP has grown by 12.8% a year in dollars in the last 13 years. And per capita income has grown at 10.8% because you have to discount for increase in population. Exports at 16, imports at 18, and share of world trade is about 8.2% CAGR, which is pretty good. So we have done well in the last 14 years, despite the criticism of the UPA. And foreign currency reserves have gone up from 39.5 to $340 billion. And I think that's very good performance, and that shows what we can do in the next 10, 20 years. If you look at this chart, this is a chart for economic growth per year in GDP from 2004 to 2014. So 2004, when the India left, it was 8.4% that year, and then it has been going up and down to 10.2% in 2008. 2009 was the global financial crisis, and when the UPL left power, we were at about 6.8%. So in the last 10 years, there has been good growth rates, and we expect to grow between 8 to 8.5% this year, and for the next 10 years, we could grow between 8 to 9% if we do things right, and I think the government is doing things right. There's a very interesting slide. We are where China was in 2004. We are 10 years behind China. China opened up in 1978, we opened up in 1991. And China is about a $10 trillion economy. We are a $2.2 trillion economy today. We are 10 years behind where China was, and you can see the growth, and you can see that 2005 in China and 2015 in India is the same pace. China grew at 9.9% a year from 1979 to 2011. 9.9% a year. No country in human history has grown at 9.9% a year for a straight, let's say, 22 years. No country has been able to do that for a straight 30 years, in fact, 1979 to 2011. No country has been able to do that, but China has done it. And India has grown in that period from 1991 till 2015 at 6.7% a year. That means China has grown 3.2% a year, much more than India has every year over the last maybe 20 years. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is women's participation in the workforce. Only 24.5% of women are in the workforce. In China, is close to 80%. In 1949, when Mao Tse-tung took over China after the Communist Revolution, he declared, women hold up half the sky. Women hold up half of heaven. Women are equal to men. And he educated the women. We didn't educate the women. We suppressed the women. We oppressed the women. And now we see lower economic growth. Because unless women participate in the economic growth as participants in many areas, the economy cannot grow at the same pace. And it is extremely important that women education, women's safety becomes the prime issue for India, because without 50% of the population participating, we will not be able to realize our potential. So to be a $10 trillion economy by 2035, in 20 years, we had to grow at 8.35%. We've grown at 7.9% in the last 10 years. We've grown at 6.7% from 1991 till 2015. So to grow at 8.3% is quite possible. Maybe if Narendra Modi rules India for 10 years, we could grow at 8.59%. And that will make India a true superpower. Now, these are some interesting slides about what happened. Investment as a percent of GDP reached a peak of 38.2% in 2011-12 and came down to 32%. So in the last 3 years of UPA2, economic growth came down because investment came down. For economic growth, there are two things: consumption, increase in consumption, that's what you and I purchase; increase in investment. So C and I are both important. And so for that purpose, we need consumptions to go up, we need investment to go up, but investment came down because they did not take decisions. And that's why people say that there was a policy paralysis in UPA2, and the impact of the policy paralysis is seen here very clearly in this data. So savings as a percent of GDP is another indication. Savings are the money people have left after paying for consumption. It reached the peak in 2011-12 of 34%. It implies the difference between 34 and 38 is what the foreign capital need from outside. It came down to 30.6% by 2013-14. That means in UPA 2, savings too came down because of very high inflation. Consumption went up because we had a decline in investment, and this is the reason why the economy is still sluggish, because investment has not picked up due to lower savings and due to very high inflation. The big reason why UPA 2 lost, I do believe, was because of high inflation. Look at this inflation. In the last 6 years, inflation has been an average about 10% a year. That means the educated middle class, including you and me, have been devastated by high inflation of over 10%, and 10% is about 60% in 6 years. The value of our savings have come down. Our ability to save has come down. Asset prices have gone up. Crony capitalists have benefited. People who borrowed money from the bank and are not paying back the bank, they have become richer. Whereas we, savers, who save money, who tighten our belts, don't consume, put in the bank and get 8-9% interest, our savings value has come down because of high inflation. And this is the reason why the educated middle class is still very unhappy today, because they're not buying because their purchasing power is down. And this long period of high inflation has devastated 300 million people, or 30 crore people who are the educated middle class in this country. And it's one of the reasons why the UPA 2 was thrown out of power by the people of this country. Now, how good are we as an economy? Look at this slide. We have 90 million tons of steel capacity. China has about 750 million tons. America has 100, Japan has 105. We are number 4 in the world. In the next 3 years, we'll have a capacity of 125 million tons. We'll be number 2 in the world, ahead of Japan and the United States, but much below China. China has 750 million tons, enormous capacity. Cement, we have 370. We're number 2 in the world, but China has 1.2 billion. So we pale in significance to China. And I want to say to all of you that if anybody wants to compare India, compare us only with China. Not with Singapore, not with Finland, not with Germany, not with the UK, not with Mexico, not with anybody else. They're very small countries. You know, if we all spit, Singapore will be drowned. Like Gandhi said, if all the Indians spit, the Great Britain will be drowned in the Indian spit. So don't compare us. So if you look at comparison, ignore them, because no country has 1.2 billion people except China. No country has the scale of challenges like India does, China does. No country has to manage so many contradictions, so much of diversity like India and China do. So don't, if somebody makes comparison, we should just ignore the comparisons and only look at China as a benchmark, maybe the United States, because it's a very large, diverse country with 320 million people. So we have a large cement capacity, steel capacity. In automobiles, we produce 17, 19 million two-wheelers. You can see the problems in all the cities. We produce 3.5 million four-wheelers, which is about the 6th, 7th largest in the world. Construction, 500 million square feet, which is very high because we consume more cement than the United States. In IT BPO, we have a $160 billion industry. And I want to say to you, sir, in 1997, when I think Vajpayee ji first came to power, Sudhindra Kulkarni wrote a 108-point program for the IT industry. Sudhindra Kulkarni got it signed by Atal ji, and they issued it. I don't think Atal ji went through in detail, but Sudhindra Kulkarni told him, he trusted Sudhindra Kulkarni. Because of that policy, we have a $160 billion IT industry today, and $160 billion today is about 10 lakh crores. 10 lakh crores. We have 35 lakh people employed. Many of the people here, children are mostly in IT companies in jobs, with IT company created the largest number of white-collar jobs in the last 15 years. And we have $100 billion of exports. $100 billion every year. This $160 billion in market value in the United States is about $300 billion. We are the second largest IT superpower in the world. And by 2020, this $160 billion is expected to go up to something like $260, $270 billion. And we'll have about 50 lakh people in IT. And you know, we could be close to the United States in terms of total people in IT. By 2021, 2022, we could overtake the United States as the total number power in IT. And this was due to the 108-point program largely done by Atalji in 1997. And I must remind you of all this. So we are written to the new Prime Minister to have a new policy for the startup industry. Startups are young companies that are coming up to say, we need 100,000 startups in the next 10 years. This will create $500 billion or $1 trillion of value, and give employment to 30 lakh people. So if you want a 9-point policy, we are in discussion with the government to do that. I hope the government realizes. In the Independence Day address, Prime Minister Modi said, stand up India, start up India. So I think young entrepreneurs in Bangalore, a few of them, in Pune, in Bombay, in Delhi, are now solving India's problem, and that's fantastic. So we have a large power sector. We have a billion cell phones in this country. So we are a large economic power. If you go on the roads here or in Bangalore, you may not seem good. If you go there, you see mark, Swachh Bharat is important. But within this country, we are a large power. So let's be very clear in our mind. Next time we talk about India, we are a major economic and industrial power. We have a very young population. Our average age is only about 27 years. One of the youngest populations in the world. So people in the productive age bracket of 15 to 64 are expected to account for over 2/3 of the population by 2025. And this is very important. Why is it important? Let me explain to you. If you look at the world today, the biggest change that is happening is demographics, the challenge of an aging society. If you look at the UK's population is growing by maybe 1.25%, but the white Englishmen are not producing enough babies. So the UK is getting immigrants from Pakistan and Bangladesh. Little bit of the Indians are going there. About 11% of UK's population is non-white. 25% of London's population come from the subcontinent. They're largely Indian, educated Indian, but more and more Pakistanis are going. So the empire is striking back. I was in Princeton about 10 years ago to meet an investor, and when I met him and spoke to him, I asked him, why are you there in the US in Princeton? And he told me, look, we have ruled you for 200 years. Now you are coming to Great Britain. I don't want to be ruled by you for 200 years, so escape to the United Kingdom. So UK's population is not growing. It's immigration that is coming through. In Germany, there are 3 young people to support 1 senior citizen. By 2020, there'll be only 2 because Germany's population is below replacement rate. The whole of Scandinavia, populations follow replacement rate. Russia's population has been declining for the last 15 years. Every year, there are less Russians. And in the east, in Siberia, the Chinese are coming into Russia. The Chinese are occupying part of Siberia. The yuan has become the currency. And very soon, Putin may lose the whole of Siberia due to the Chinese invasion. And Russia is shrinking in population, getting older. Russian men are drinking vodka and killing themselves because maybe the women are oppressing them, I don't know. So even if you look at the whole of Europe, population is shrinking. And in Europe, from North Africa, the Muslim population is about maybe 12% because there's immigration coming from North Africa. So there is a churning happening in the whole of Europe, and that's why in the next 20-25 years, Europe may grow at only 1% a year. If you look at Japan, Japan is a case in point. What happens if a society is not open and you don't produce enough babies? And we produce 2.5 crore babies a year. We don't want so many babies, but we still produce 2.5 crore babies. Japan's last year, there were 1.25 million, 12 lakh Japanese died, only 10 lakh babies were born. And 2 years ago, male diapers, males, when you get older, you wear a diaper like a child because you have a problem. Adult diapers sold more than baby diapers. 25% of the population are more than 65 in Japan. The Japanese population of 127 million is expected to fall to 97 million by 2050 and 67 million by 2100. So Japan will never be an economic power because the population is shrinking. China's population is growing at 0.5% in 10 years because they have a one-child baby. They had a one-child policy in 1978. That means if 2 people marry, they can have only 1 child, and this child can marry another child from a family which has 2 parents, and these 2 from single child parents marry together, they can produce only 1 child. So you have 2 plus 4, 6 people to be supported by 1 person. That's why you have this issue, social phenomena of baby emperors and spoiled brats who are now changing dynamics. So there's a fear that China's adult working age population has peaked 2 years back and is now declining. Wages are going up, and the Chinese may be older before they grow richer. And if you look at the United States, by 2050, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant American will be a minority, with the Hispanics becoming the largest community. There are Hispanics, the Spanish-speaking people coming from Mexico. They're becoming bigger and bigger. They're immigrating, and they're speaking Spanish. They change the politics of the United States. And by 2050, they could be the largest ethnic group. So we're going to see a change in America, which has been a bastion of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants for the last 200 years, and which has made itself a superpower. And if you look at South America, population is still growing slowly. The African population is 1.25 trillion, as big as India, in a landmass which is 10 times bigger, and they're growing because they've got a fertility rate of 2.5 babies per fertile woman. The whole of the Middle East has got a problem because the average age of the population is 18, 19. And they got a population problem because they are producing more babies, as is that community in India too. They have a higher fertility within India. So this change in population is going to create its own kind of economic impetus all over. India's population is stabilizing. We'll be larger than China maybe in 20 years, but we'll have the youngest population in the world till 2050. But the fear is this young population will be semi-literate, we're going to have a demographic nightmare because we're not educating them, we're not producing enough jobs. Every year, 2.5 crore young people, 2.4 crore young people come into the workforce. Assuming 25% of them get married or go into agriculture, 1.8 crore people attain the age of majority, want jobs. We have to produce 1.8 crore jobs a year. And if we don't produce the jobs, they're going to be on the street, they're going to be Maoists, they're going to throw stones in Srinagar, or they're going to be in FTII, wherever they are, shutting down the institution or whatever they want to do because there are no jobs. And this is the biggest danger that we have because we have a very young population. We have a middle class of 30 crore people. It's got up from 10 crores in 1991 to about 30 crores. And look at this chart. This is an important chart. If you look at the BRIC countries, or if you look at India, China, US, Western Europe, India's average age is 29 now, could get younger in the next 20 years. China is 37, USA 37, Germany is 45, Japan is 48. Average age of the Japanese is 48. And this is very important. Average age of people in Mangalore should be 45. I want to tell all of you, as citizens of Mangalore, there are no jobs for the children in Mangalore. There are no jobs. All your children, if they want jobs, will go outside Mangalore. You go to Calcutta, for the last 40 years, there have been no jobs. For the last 40 years, young people have gone out. In Calcutta, they are senior citizens. They are the Biharis on the streets, sadly. The poorer classes, in-between layer is gone. In Mangalore too, you're going to have senior citizens, parents staying here in the old houses, waiting for the children to come back. They're not going to come back. They're going to be outside in Bangalore, the United States, Delhi, Mumbai, somewhere, because there are no jobs here. And it's very important that citizens of Mangalore like you, who are leaders of Mangalore, should get together to see how to create jobs, how to get good service industry, non-polluting industry to Mangalore, so that your children stay here and grow this city. Because if you don't have young people, 20 years later, you're going to have a major problem. The same problem that Japan has today is going to afflict every single city, which is not a growth engine, which is not going to grow. Now we have a very good higher education in our structure. We have now 750 universities, 47,000 colleges, and 3 crore young people in college. Every year we produce 80 lakh graduates. 80 lakh graduates every year. We have 3 crore young people in colleges, 80 lakh graduates. We produce 800,000 engineers, 8 lakh engineers. We produce about 40,000 doctors. We produce about 1 lakh, 1.5 lakh management, MBAs. And we produce a fair number of lawyers. But most of the people do something called arts in India in education, which is very sad. So you learn English in Hindi. In Rajasthan, you get a MA English in Hindi. In Kerala, you get a MA English in Malayalam. I don't know what they do in Tamil Nadu. In Karnataka, I think is still a little bit of English is still left. They've not been able to change. But it's very important that people learn their own language, also a global language. They must know both these languages to succeed in this world. But we have a good education structure. But let me tell you the tragedies of education. Out of 100 children who come to class 1, only 65 completes class 10. Complete means they may fail. Only 75-80% pass. Only 65, 35 drop out before class 10 all over India. And out of the 65, maybe 30 go to college. Only 30 go to college, and maybe 23, 24 complete college in the southern states. The whole of the southern state, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and Kerala have a gross enrollment rate of something like 30%. That is 30% of children get a degree in the age group of 18 to 23, whereas the whole of the North is only about 18%. But the North is getting, doesn't have education. Younger people are not getting education. They're going to be people with no skills. They're going to be people with no education, and that is going to be the major problem. And that's another challenge in India. Between 1971 and 2011, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu, share of the Indian population came down from 30% to 25%. From 30% to 25%. And if you look forward another 15 years, the share of South India in the population of India will come down from 25% to 20%. At the time of independence, the whole of these countries, the share of population was about 35%. And the share of the seats in parliament were based upon the population of 1971, fortunately, and they have now changed it to something like 2011, going up to 2031. Till 2031, the share of total number of seats for each state is fixed based upon the 1971 population. And if they change it in 2031, the whole of the South is going to have lesser representatives in parliament. So parliament has frozen it based upon a number, but we're going to have a challenge. So if you look at education, the South is doing well, Middle India is not doing well, Western India, including Gujarat, Gujarat is not doing well in higher education. Karnataka is much better, Tamil Nadu is much better. West Bengal is not doing well. Eastern India is not doing well. The South is doing well. So most of the growth is in the South. And if you look at economic conditions south of India, we have grown at 10% a year for the last 15 years. We have grown equal to China. The whole of the South is like China in growth. It's the North that is pulling us down. Now look at this chart. This is a very important chart. In 1820, the GDP of China and India was 42% of the world GDP. Great Britain took over India, impoverished India, and if you read the book, The Case for India, written by Will Durant, the American philosopher, in 1930, The Case for India in 1930, he says, but in 1857 and 1930, the British took away enough money which is valued at $400 billion in 1930 money. In 1930 money, they impoverished this country. China and India made up 42% of world GDP. In 1900, India made up only 10% of world GDP. In 1947, we were only 2 or 3%. We have been impoverished. Our wealth went away to Great Britain. Great Britain built the Industrial Revolution, built a great empire, fought 2 great wars, and now it's become a broken down country. So we have been looted. Pliny the Elder, 2000 years ago, wrote, Rome will be impoverished by the trade with India. Because when Rome traded with India, India sent us silk and textiles and got gold and silver. India has been the traditional sink of gold and silver. We have 25,000 tons of gold in India, many of which are on many of the members here. And we have 125,000 tons of silver. So every time the silver price goes up, Indian silver goes out, like the hunt brother this from the corner of the marketplace. So we have a great degree of richness even now in the people of this country, but not in the government because we don't trust our government, right? We had very oppressive government for 1,000 years, and only now we have been free. But look at this chart. 2014, US, Europe, Japan is $40 trillion. China, India, others is $36 trillion. 2021, in the next 6 years, we're going to see the share of the emerging markets overtake the OECD. The last time it happened was in 1820. So this decade is going to see a tremendous change in the world in the share of economic power. And you go forward another 10 years to 2031, you see the emerging markets will be twice the size of Europe, America, and Japan. And in this, for the next maybe 16 years, China may grow at 6%, India at 7.4%, others may grow at 6%. This is the outer boundary, but US will grow at 2.6 at 2.2 because of immigration. Europe will grow at 1.5 and Japan less than 1%. So the days of growth of Europe is over. The days of Europe dominating is over. And the United States too will grow slower and become a Hispanic country by then. And this chart is important. This chart is important for our leaders to understand what is happening in the world. It's important for you to understand what is happening on the world. It's important for our Chief Minister, Mr. Siddaramaiah, to understand what is in the world, because you must take advantage of this and you must change your economic policies. And we must become a rich country by opening up this economy. And you can see how things are going to change, and that's why we need a good government. Now, this is another interesting slide. You must see how India and China have grown. India and China compared to each other. Population, China is just ahead. Growth rate, China is 0.5%, we are 1.3%. And I want to give you another piece of data. Kerala's population grew in the last 10 years, 2001, 2011, at 0.5%. Kerala has 1,069 women to 1,000 men, because many of the men have gone up to the Middle East, you know that. But 12% of Kerala is either Bihari, Oriya or Bengali. 12% of Kerala. Another 10 years, 20% of Kerala will be non-Malayali. Maybe in 20 years, the Malayali will be a minority in the land of the Malayali. Because why? They're not producing enough babies. And I'm not asking you to produce more babies. Please, I don't want the headlines to be Mohandas Pai says produce more babies. I'm not saying anything like that, okay? I'm just giving you some economic fact. But because of the inflow of labor from outside, in Kerala, there's going to be a demographic change. Because Keralites want to go work in the Gulf. And for the Biharis and the Oriyas and the Bengalis, Kerala is the new Dubai. You get 500 rupees per day for unskilled labor, 1,000 rupees a day for skilled labor. Who will pay you 1,000 rupees a day for skilled labor? So whole villages are coming. Just now at lunch, I was talking to a colleague and he said, when I came by train to Trivandrum, I saw a train from North India. It was full of North Indians. So there's a change happening all over India. Sir, every year, 25,000 young girls come from the northeast of India, are coming down south, entire south, working in hotels in the service industry. For the last 6 years, 1,25,000, 1,50,000 young girls have come. When the girls go, young girls go, the boys follow. Natural, isn't it? Every young boy wants to follow a girl. So the insurgency in the northeast is coming down, not because of government of India. It's coming down because the girls are going out to get jobs. They're getting educated and going out of that place. That place is going to get older. So Bangladeshis may come and fill up the whole of the northeast. We have a danger because the local population is going out. And in Srinagar, if you want to solve the Kashmir problem, we must give 1,50,000 jobs to all the boys in Srinagar who throw stones. Give them in the army, give them in the CRSF, give them in the CISF, give them in the banks, take them away from Srinagar, send them to Kerala, send them to Bihar, send them to Karnataka, send them everywhere, disperse them all over. There won't be enough people to throw stones in Srinagar. Why are they throwing stones? There are no jobs. Why are they throwing stones? Because the money is being eaten away by a very corrupt regime. The money is eaten away by corrupt regime. Government of India sends money, it is being swaham by a lot of people there. And the young people don't have jobs. If young people don't have jobs, they become revolutionaries. They're getting paid by Pakistan to throw stones. And they throw stones. They're being paid by Pakistan to put up the Pakistani flag. So we must provide them jobs and we can hire them. It's only 1,50,000, not a large number. Take away 1,50,000, give them jobs in central government all over. You'll see a very different Srinagar. And if you look at this literacy, look at that. 74 and 92, that is in 2011, now is 95, 97 for China. And it means the Chinese educated the children, gave them literacy, gave them education for 12 years of school. They're doing very well. Pandit Nehru built the IITs, built many elitist institutions, didn't educate the ordinary Indian. Because didn't educate the ordinary Indian, didn't even give him primary education, secondary education, didn't spend on that. We have only 74% literacy, 55% of Indians defecate in the open. They don't have a toilet. Educated people don't go to the fields, am I right? Because you know better. So we have this problem because we are not invested in our people. Look at South Kendra. South Kendra's indices are better than America. Maternal mortality rate better than America. Infant mortality rate better than America. Longevity better than America. Health indices better than America. The whole of South Kendra. Why? Because the whole of South Kendra is educated. Even though sometimes they argue all the time and they're very difficult people in South Kendra, but they're still well educated and the human development indices are very, very high. So we must educate our people. If you look at GDP, in PPP they are 16.1, now they're 17.7. Per capita income 6,800. Export, import. China has become the factory of the world, largest exporter, largest importer. it has $4 trillion of reserves. When the Chinese currency depreciated 2%, only 2%, the world shook. The financial markets, the world shook. America shook because the Chinese currency depreciated by 2%. So China and India, and if you look at this data, 10 years later, can we be what China is today? Because we're 10 years behind China. Can we be that? There is a hope, 80% probability, but we need a good, stable, focused government. And look at this about China and India. 53% of our population depend on services, 29% industry, 18% agriculture. In China, industry is 40%, services 51%. So China has become the factory of the world, taken people away from agriculture, put them on to good jobs, and they're reaping the benefits. Where India has failed in industry, and India is not able to give jobs, so we have a problem. Sir, today, farmers are committing suicide. But let me tell you, more women are committing suicide in India than farmers. 250,000 Indians commit suicide every year. 250,000. Out of which I think some 15% are farmers, 25% are women. More women commit suicide than farmers. Nobody talks about these poor women. The women are oppressed. They're driven away by their husbands. They're beaten by their husbands. They're driven away by other people. They commit suicide out of frustration, out of agony, out of helplessness. We oppress a woman, and that has to stop. And you can see the difference here. And the point I'm trying to say is, 18% of GDP is agriculture, but 52% of population depends on 18% of GDP growing at 3%. 52% of India depends on 18% of GDP growing at 3%, whereas 82% of India, 48% of India depends on 82% of GDP growing at 10%. So people in manufacturing, people in services see the income going by 10%. People in farming or agriculture see the income going by 3%. Why is that? Because agriculture cannot support so many people. America produces the same amount of food grains as India, but there are only about 3 million people in agriculture, 30 lakh people in agriculture. We have 52% of population. 52% of population means we have 65 crore people depend on agriculture. And the only solution is to take them from agriculture, put them into factories. So we need factories, we need the land acquisition bill, we need investment, we need growth. We have to move them because they can never earn enough income. The average land holding is about maybe 2.5 hectares or so. It's become smaller and smaller. Only 16% of Indians own or farmers own land. Out of the 52%, 16% own land. The barons are landless labor or do some small trades. And sir, the agrarian crisis is a result of the lack of jobs in the economy, not because farming is not doing well. Farming cannot support that population. They must go out. And you look at everybody, 2 generations back, our parents, grandparents were on the land. They went away, they worked in cities, they stayed in small places, educated us, we are doing well. Now the people who are stuck on land are the people who have not been able to do that. In 1970 or whatever, Devarajas had land reforms in Karnataka, am I right? In Shimoga, other places, the landowners, they were all thrown away, land was taken away, given to the tiller. Now, 40 years later, who is better off? All the people who lost the land came to Bangalore, went somewhere, educated the children, they're all in America with big dollar balances. All the people who got the land are struggling on the land, population has grown 3-4 times, the land has subdivided, they're becoming poorer than they were when they got the land. Am I right or wrong? Am I right or wrong? Not many are done. Why? Because the land cannot support so many people. We must shift. China has shifted 30 crore people from the land to the factory in the last 20 years. And that can only come if we have industrialization, we have jobs, we have urbanization. Only 34% of India is urban. 52% of the world is urban. 55% of China is urban today. Only 35% of India is urban, because we say, oh, Indians stay in the villages. Our politicians want everybody to stay in the village. Don't come to the town and clutter up the town, make it bad because I'm staying there enjoying everything. I get water in the tap, power, everything. You stay in the village. They want to do well, but them. In the village, there is no future for so many people. There's a future for a limited number of people, like in South Kendra. In South Kendra, I think those who stay in villages do it by choice, not compulsion. But if you look at this chart, you understand what India has to do. We have to build infrastructure. Look at this chart. China has to spend 6.4% of GDP on infrastructure, is spending 8.5%. India needs to spend 6.9%, we are spending 4.7%. Our infrastructure is 15 years behind what we need today. That's why our roads are bad, Our national highways are crowded, our railways are crowded, our airports have become like bus stations, our ports are crowded, everything is crowded in India because we're not building infrastructure. We're not investing in advance. We're investing behind the curve. We don't understand. Now, hopefully, with Gadkari around, we're going to have better roads in the next 5-6 years. But we underinvested in infrastructure for the last 15 years. And you can see here the extent of underinvestment. And no country in the world has underinvested like India. So we made our mistakes here. And look at this chart again. Look at China, India, and others. You see that even though we have a fair share of the world GDP, we are very underinvested. Now, this is about India. So I want to tell you about the last 1 year, what has happened, what our new Prime Minister has done wrong, and what he could have done better. One, he cleared the pipeline of projects. There were some 15 lakh, 20 lakh crores of projects stuck up. He has cleared it. So I think good news. They're all starting off. Hopefully they'll not become NPAs because many of them are set up by cronies. But nevertheless, they're starting off. Environmental clearance were eased. You heard about the Jayanti tax. They found 2,500 files locked away somewhere. People are making money. With the new environment minister has cleared it up. He's a very honest man. That's cleared up. I think that's good news. So environment clearances have been eased out. And environment has not been hurt. No environment has been hurt. But environment clearance is happening better. FDI in insurance, defense done. Hopefully, instead of importing 85% of our defense needs, we import 85%. Why? Because if we import, retired people get commission, middlemen get commission, political leaders get commission. That's why they import, not because of anything else. We can make the same thing in India. Now, FDI has come into defense, hopefully we'll do better. Insurance will go up because we need more capital. Roads and railways, massive investment. Suresh Prabhu is going to hopefully stay there for 5 years and do a good job. He's going to invest 8,50,000 crores in 5 years, which is good news. And roads this time has gone up by 2.6 times. Gadkari has got a budget of 80,000 crores. Last year the budget was 29,000 crores. And if we keep spending that kind of money, we'll hopefully see a better road network. Our supply chain costs of 14% of GDP. We're very inefficient. America's supply chain is 5% of GDP. China is 6%. Auction of coal and spectrum, they auctioned it. It's been transparent and government is going to get a lot of money. So the cronies can't go to the Prime Minister's office, get a letter and talk to cronies and get away. That's all that is gone today. Social security is very important. I think the Prime Minister said everybody should have medical insurance. 40% of people who slip into poverty because of medical reasons. Because they fall ill, they sell the land, they sell the jewelry, sell everything, they get treatment, they still die. 40% of people who become poor because of medical insurance. Now they're going to get medical insurance, a new scheme, and there's going to be a life insurance scheme. So your breadwinner dies, they're going to get some pension for the widow. And the last 1 year, this government has been corruption free. The Prime Minister said, "Main khaunga nahi, kisi ko khane ko nahi dunga." And there's been no occasion for corruption in Delhi. Nobody, the secretaries are scared, bureaucrats are scared, the ministers are even more scared. So there's no money. That's why in Noida and Gurgaon, property prices have come down. Because all the bribe money went to Noida and Gurgaon and the property prices were up. Because in land business, you can put cash, black money, right? So you can't put black money. There's no black money now in Delhi. Money has come down because nobody is going to Delhi and paying bribes. And that's why the real estate prices come down. We have a good budget. Last 4 budgets of Chidambaram, taxes collection target was very high. He never reached the target. He said, I'm going to spend so much of rural development, 25%. For the poor, 30%. Women, 25%. Medical, 25%. When the actual estimates came, they were less than the previous year. Because there's no money in the kitty. Every year he said that. So everybody said, oh, the UP is spending. They didn't spend money. He cut the planned budget by 1 lakh crore each year for 2 years. This year, the taxes will be as per the budget because the high targets are not set. And because Chidambaram set very high target, there was tax terrorism. It's 8,35,000 crores of disputed taxes. Tax demands raised by the Income Tax Office against corporates. 75% of the appeals are being turned down in the tribunal. They were all perverse assessment. There was much corruption because many of them said, we got a high target, I'll do this assessment, you go do what you want, you go in appeal. They should tell us, go in appeal. I'm doing it because I got a high target. I know I'm doing wrong, but I got a high target. What do you expect me to do? Because of perverse high target set up by PC, and that's gone today. The budget has been good. Of course, JT messed up the last year's budget, 14-15, because they took Chidambaram's budget, did some small 100 crores, 200 crores, issued it. You should have taken the hit. He didn't do it. GST will hopefully be launched next year. We don't know. We got to see. Hopefully the Prime Minister push for it. He has brilliantly marketed India overseas. Absolutely brilliant. Never been done since the Vajpayee years or Nehru years. We have made peace with all the neighbors, excluding Pakistan. Sri Lanka is friendly to us, Bangladesh is friendly to us, Nepal is friendly, Bhutan is friendly. Only Pakistan thinks India is an enemy, and he told him to go take a walk. They're of course shelling across the border. We got to hit them back because they are bullies. They're all big bullies. And for a bully, unless you stand up and hit him, he'll never listen. They just want to talk to keep the charade of peace going. But we have a strong man now. He has made peace with the United States. The United States is playing ball. He's made peace with Japan. He has made peace with Europe. He has made peace with Central Asia. He has been to Dubai in the Middle East and made peace. And the declaration in Dubai that terrorism and religion should not be linked is a very important declaration, because the IS is also going to Dubai in the Middle East, and that's very important. They also realize you let these fundamentalists come, you are going to be dead. And Saudi Arabia is going to have deep challenges because they're going after the Shias in Yemen. So there's a problem. So all over the world, the world believes India has got a strong leader and he can deliver. But sadly, he's going outside and talking and sending us messages for various reasons because we got a dysfunctional parliament. What are the negatives? Everything cannot be positive. There's got to be some negative. Tax terrorism is still there. People are scared. Tax terrorism has not come down. It's come down a little bit, but we have to see in the next 2 years how disputes are going to be done. The MAT on FIRs was a boo-boo, was a big mistake. GAR is a big mistake. Some of you are technical will understand all this. We have 12% of bank debts as NPAs, our stress asset. Out of 60 lakh crores of bank lending, 7 lakh 50,000 crores is stress or could go bad. That means the cronies have taken away our money, become rich, built the bungalows, bought the cars, bought the planes, and they're not paying back the banks. And because they're not paying by the bank, deposit rates are coming down. And the rest of us who are honest people who borrowed from banks have to pay higher interest because these cronies are not paying back. So the government should take away the assets of these cronies, auction them, pay back the bank so that honest people can get lower interest. So not much action has been taken except pumping in more money. I think the failure. And next is, our Prime Minister should talk to the Indian people more. He must communicate with India. He's not communicating enough with industry. He's not communicating enough with people except that Man Ki Baat and all that. But he must talk to people, meet industry every 2 months, talk to them. And just like he went to Dubai and spoke about foreign policy, he must speak to the Indian people about policy because communication is very important. Of course, he goes to Bihar and he talks to the Indian people through that. But I think communication needs to improve. And the land acquisition bill is still a challenge. I mean, these are the negatives that have been there. I'm sure that some of them will take time to go ahead. But overall, I think in the last 1 year, we have seen a change of government. We've seen a government that means business. We've seen a government that is not scared. We've seen a government that promised growth and employment and development and trying to do its best. We've seen a government that's not corrupt. And we've seen a government with a vision. We've seen a government that is compassionate to poor people, giving them the safety net. We've seen a government that's going after the cronies, cutting out the waste in subsidies. Subsidies are coming down. And we've seen a government that has made peace with the world to make sure India is respected all in the world. But today what we see, we see an ideological fight in Parliament. What is the fight? The ideological fight is between the left of center and the right. The party in power is rightist. It's gone to the right, means economically conservative. But the parties in power so long were left, extreme like the CPM, left of center like the Congress. So the CPM, the Socialist Party and the left parties know that in case Modi succeeds, India grows, growth and development come, they're not going to come back in power in 2019. They can kiss their future goodbye. And if we don't come back in power in 2019, many of the leaders of the erstwhile government will be too old to be in power, right? We got to see how many of them live through. They're going to be too old, and if they don't come to power for the next 10 years, they suddenly may not be there. So they're fighting, and the only way to fight is to disrupt Parliament, shut down Parliament. And we are not send them to power to shut down Parliament. So the Indian people should make the voice heard to say, debate in Parliament, keep it open, don't shut it down. And we're not going to accept that. And I think we have to do that as a people because our future, the future of our children is at stake. It's not the future of an opposition party. Nobody cares for them. Our future. This country belongs to us. This is our country. It's our future, our children's future, and that is important. For that we require Parliament to work. For that we require growth. For that we require good policies. For that we require jobs. Our children want jobs. Our children want education. Our people want social security. And that's what we want the government to do. That's what we want the Parliament to do. And that's why we're in the midst of a great ideological fight. And this fight is not going to be easy. Maybe for the next 2 years, Parliament is going to be shut down. They will not allow Parliament to work, so we've got to be careful. We've got to raise a voice. With this, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to say I loved coming here and talking to all of you. And if you have any questions, I'll be most happy to answer them. Thank you very much.